There's something I found very interesting. I was, for quite a period of time, I was meditating on this book of Esther. No, not Esther, Ruth. And I saw something that I had never seen before. And it was based on this one word, gleaning. Gleaning. So I realized that in those biblical times, the way God had set the rules for them, there was an acknowledgement that there will be people who are poor and there will be people who are successful. So in this book, there is this guy called Boaz, who was a wealthy man, a very, very wealthy man. And on this other side, there is this lady and her mother-in-law, called Ruth, who they had lost everything. They had lost everything. Their husbands, they didn't have fields to generate food.
No sons.
They didn't have sons. They had lost everything. So Ruth tells Naomi, let me go to the fields to glean. And she gets her mother-in-law's blessings. She says, you go, and may you have favor. And she wanders into this Boaz's field. And Boaz shows up later, and he's like, he asks his reapers, the guys he had employed, who is this woman? And they say that she's in fact, she said, who is it? There's a name that the Bible was using. I forget that name. Anyway, who is this woman who is in my field? And they say, this is this woman who came with Naomi from this land of Moabites, and she's gleaning. And something about her made her stand out on the first day in the field. She was, so to glean in that time meant there are these guys who are harvesting. They're called reapers. As they harvest, they are putting the straws together. Some of them are falling to the ground. The grains are falling to the ground. So as they are harvesting and they are moving forward, they were required, anything that falls to the ground, they should not pick it. Anything that falls to the ground, they should not pick it. The poor people were allowed to glean in other people's field. They would now come gleaning. To glean is to gather leftovers. So they would come gathering leftovers. So Ruth was coming behind them and she was gathering these leftovers. Anything she gathers is hers, because she has no field. They have no field. So God had designed it in such a way that even the way of life, if you're blessed, people are allowed, widows and orphans are allowed to come into your field and just glean, collect the leftovers. But something about Ruth was so outstanding is that she was really doing this without much rest. She was diligent, she was a hard worker, and that made her stand out. That day, she was called to sit on the table, the same table as Boaz and his reapers, and eat together. And something very interesting happened. After they ate, and she said she was satisfied, the Bible says that she was allowed to take leftovers from the table. Again, she gleaned from the table. And I learned a very important lesson. A very important lesson. That the way God has designed this world, that when you're blessed with a lot, we are required to allow others to glean. in our fields to glean. Now that's from a perspective. If you're the one people demand black tax, the good black tax, not the bad black tax, you are allowed. You need to design your life in such a way that you deliberately allow others to glean in your field. Now, on the other side, you do not have the resources. You must also come with an attitude of diligence and hard work. Because if Ruth and other gleaners were not collecting the leftovers, guess what? It would have been a very chaotic. So they were adding value as they were gleaning. So I just thought to touch on both sides, that it's important, if you're blessed, it's important that you give room for others to glean on your blessings. And if you're the one who is in need today, and you see, you're not in need forever. You should not be a dependent for forever. For that season that you're a dependent, you also need to be adding value to those who are allowing you to glean. What does it take to wash someone's car? Ask yourself, if you have both hands, you have legs, you have brain, you have everything, it can't be that you just are given and you sleep the whole day waiting for a job to come to you. Wake up, wash someone's car, do something, add value. You can make sure you're justifying your existence by adding value to someone else. You don't even need to be paid anything. There are these street boys. You find them at the roundabouts, and they come with water and they pour it on your windscreen, and then they clean. Okay, what does that do to you? It messes you up. I don't allow them to do it, but it just makes you feel, hey, this guy should not do this for free. So I'm not sure that's the best example, but you get the message. You cannot be a human being who has you're in good health, you have both hands, you have legs, you can walk, you can do something, and you are just given. That's begging. That's a life of begging. Add value to someone, and you will never have to beg anyone. Things will just find you. Eventually, Ruth became wife to Boaz, meaning she became now a controller of resources. But she would not have been noticed if it was not for her diligence.
First of all, just to appreciate for providing such a platform where we can have such candid and open discussions. So first things first, I think, is it okay if I probably just add to what you said to assist my sister? Something that has actually worked for me is I've come to appreciate the place of having a kitty, a giving kitty. Basically what I do is, out of my monthly income, I set aside a specific portion that goes towards giving. And the only rule for this kitty is that myself as William, I don't qualify as a needy person to benefit from that kitty. The beauty of it is that anytime I get a needy situation, I have a place where I can get that money from, because I've realized most of the frustrations that we have when people need help or people reach out to us for help is we don't know where that money is going to come from, yeah? And the beauty of it is that over time, I've come to realize that sometimes I even have a surplus in my kitty, and I look for situations where I can actually give and settle some monies out of that kitty. So probably that is something that you could consider as well. So my question, out of the many that I had, unfortunately I've been limited to ask only one, is black tax, especially coming from parents, yeah? Most of our parents come from the generation where they had this genius idea that their retirement plan would actually be investing in their children, yeah? So that these children are the ones who take care of them once they retire or they settle back home. So they go to a place where they sacrificed their comfort so that they could educate us to some of the best schools, where you find someone like me, for example, yeah? My parents took me to the best of schools. I was born and raised up country, but I don't have an accent from my village, yeah? So it's basically because of the sacrifice that my parents took so that they can teach me and educate me in some of these places. So then my question is, how do you strike a balance where you want to acknowledge and appreciate the sacrifice that they made and support them back, while at the same time, you want to forge your own path? Because sometimes some of the requirements that they put on you, or some of the bills they put on you, can be quite outrageous, because you end up becoming their major source of income, or their only source of income for that matter. So they rely on you for all of their needs, especially, or rather including paying school fees for your siblings, paying school fees for your cousins, contributing for their church shamas, contributing for the pastor's car or pastor's house, you know. So how do you draw a line where, especially as a person of faith, where you want to acknowledge and appreciate the sacrifice that they put for you to be where you are, while at the same time you want to forge your own path and not to be quote unquote tied down by these demands? Thank you.
You have any advice on that one?
Let's start with you.
I think I touched on this in the earlier comment I made, which is, number one, like you say, like you practice yourself, have a kitty. Forgiving, just forgiving, and you're not qualified to be given from that kitty yourself. You have to be disciplined about it, obviously, and be strict about not crossing over that. Obviously, you have to be aware what your income opportunities are, what your expense requirements are on a monthly basis or quarterly, whatever it is, so that you're planning in advance for not crossing over that line. And the same goes for parents. I mean, I use a prioritization list for myself in terms of how to decide, because sometimes you have to violate the budget. If it's an emergency situation, that's a reality with life. So what circumstance or what situation would make it acceptable for me to do that? And I use and I'll share this list. It could be a helpful guide. Someone shared it with me and it made sense for me. So number one is my immediate family, my spouse, my children. Priority number one. They have to have a roof over their head. They need food in their tummies. They need clothes to wear. They need health care. They need education. So in terms of my budgeting, that is focused on first. I don't screw around with that. It's my responsibility as a head of the home to do that. And a privilege too. That song, I think it was Sauti Sol. Kila mtoto anakuja na sahani yake. I have found that to be true. So I don't feel pressure in that sense. In fact, I jokingly said once to my friends, maybe I should have more kids, because every time I had a child, my income exploded. I am just a conduit through which God provides for them. So I have to be responsible for that resource. I'm a manager of resource on behalf of God. I am God to these children. I am a representation of God, if you want to think about it that way. I think we can all appreciate that, right? So I have to be a responsible steward in that regard. So I prioritize them first. Next is my extended family, beginning with my parents, before my siblings. Okay? Parents first, before my siblings. But my parents come second to my spouse and children. It's a very clean cut for me. And thankfully, I have parents who understand that dynamic themselves. So it's not a struggle. I don't have to have a sit down with them. I learned that from them, actually, by observing their lives. Now, after my parents and my two sisters is my friends. Okay? After my friends, then it's society at large. That's how I prioritize. So there's all sorts of ways to approach it. You could have a kitty say it's 10K a month. You divvy it up proportionately by those creations. Obviously, the 10% doesn't cover my immediate family, my nuclear family, because they're covered in the other budget. But in terms of a benevolent fund, that's how I make decisions. So on a random month or a week or a day, a friend will call and say, hey, Solo, I need a bailout. I need like 15K. I'll M-Pesa it to you tomorrow. And I say yes in principle, because it's in my benevolent fund. They're a friend. I value that relationship. They're not entitled. Their attitude is right. And this is exactly why I put it aside, is to be there for friends and family, the people who are close to me, right? Now, 5 minutes later, my mom calls. Like, son, this has happened. Are you able to assist? I will have zero conflict in my mind and in my heart about calling my friend and say, hey, dude, I know I said yes, I have it, but mom just called 5 minutes after you, and she needs that 15K. Please excuse me, I have to sort out mom. Because of my prioritization list. Does that make sense? Obviously, that introduces the dynamics around the quality of friends you have. If my friend will not understand that I need to prioritize my mom ahead of him, maybe he should not be my friend. It's very simple. It's not as complicated as people make it. And so that would be my advice. Have clean lines and boundaries drawn, and be disciplined about it, and always be kind. Always be kind with your words. Even when you're saying no, you can be kind in saying no. Mm-hmm. Right? Always keep your word. If you said yes, follow through. If you said no, be disciplined to keep it as a no. But always be kind, and you'll be fine. Mm-hmm. That's been my experience so far. I wish someone told me this when I was 20. I learned the hard way through my late 20s into my 30s. And since I started practicing that, I've had a lot of peace.
I have a problem to mention black tax and giving in the same sentence. It's messing my mind. What I'd say very quickly, never miss an opportunity to be a blessing to your parents. Never ever miss. You have them for some time, and a time may come where that opportunity will never be there. Never ever miss that opportunity. And two angles. One, giving them where the needs are critical. I'd have a problem if your parents are sleeping hungry and you're having a king's meal at home. There's something wrong with that picture. So there are critical things that we just can't accept to happen to our parents when we are alive. Just like they would not be at peace to have Solo die in winter because he was feeling cold. They would have done,
which is why
moved the whole world around them to make sure that he is comfortable. That is being human. The other aspect of it beyond critical, and that's where it's even most important, just to be a blessing. There are so many people who are a blessing to everybody else around them, but they are not a blessing to their parents. You know, look for opportunities to do something that will make them go on their knees and say, God, remember my son, remember my daughter. Because you did something out of your own volition and completely surprised them and made them very happy and created a memory that will last forever and that will make them to bless you whenever they remember you. So I don't think this is a calculation question. This is a heart matter, and we all have, some people call it intuition, others sixth sense, others' gut, and me, the Spirit of God in me that always tells me what's the right thing to do. You will know in every situation what's the right thing to do. So I would not even want to use the word black tax when my parents are concerned.
1,000,000% what Pius has said, which is what I was trying to explain by saying there are situations that require you to blow your budget because you're responding in the way that Pius said, and particularly with parents. Yeah. You can actually force God. Now, see, we're all, most of us are Christians here. I hope we're not offending anyone. And I like to be sensitive to that. Now, since we're talking about Christian principles here, you can actually provoke God into blessing you because of your attitude towards your parents. You know, it's the first commandment with a promise. Honor your father and mother, that it may go well with you and have good success in life. It's actually the first thing you do to guarantee you have a good life is honor your father and mother in as much as you have the opportunity, even when they dishonor you. I would actually say, especially when they dishonor you, is when you kick into overdrive to honor them. I know it's easier said than done. And I, for one, have never had parents that have dishonored me, so easy for me to say, right? I know friends who have had terrible, terrible situations with parents, estranged parents, abusive parents. It's a reality. But that does not negate God's word. And you know, I had this conversation with a friend and I was advising them to do that with humility. Listen, your dad abandoned you when you were kids, you suffered, whatever. Now he's back in your life, he needs help. The guy does not feel like going out of his way to respond to the father's need because he was never there for them. Logical, right? But you know, as a Christian, in which he is also, I had to point out to him, listen, when God gave that commandment or that wisdom, he knew about your situation with your father beforehand because he knows everything and he still didn't care. He made it a commandment. So you have a responsibility in that sense to honor your father and your mother, and any opportunity you have to bless them, to be kind to them, take it. And sometimes even sacrificially. And one last thing I might add for you, William, is I see a wedding ring on your left hand, so this I would advise mostly to single people, because once you're married, the protocol changes. Right? If you're not yet married, have a sit down with your parents and say, listen, mom, dad, because of you, your support, whatever, you educated me, God's grace, blessing, favor, my diligence, my hard work, this is a job I have. I'm making whatever, let's say it's 50K a month. I want to support you guys, but these are my goals. These are my financial goals. I have to pay rent of X. I have to buy food of X. I need X for transportation. And I put aside 10% for giving. Now, I'm happy to make that 10% exclusively for you and dad until my income increases. Or 15 or whatever, because I know your needs are this, that, or the other. This is what I can afford. Preempt that situation by being transparent with them, because I find when parents know what you're making, they will self-regulate, because no parent wants to be a leech on their parents. If they do, obviously there's a problem there. Therefore, you will need to grow up and set the boundaries yourself. But that's one way to go about it. Now, if you're married, obviously your income is no longer your parents' business. It's between you and your spouse. And now you and your spouse have to agree about what you're doing with your family income. But again, to echo Pius's advice there, 100%, don't miss any opportunity to honor your parents. Ni hayo tu.
So my question is based on a product I offer for my work. we have a product called Fahari. How this product works is that I can gift someone, like my mom, my dad, my friends, my domestic workers. I can pay on their behalf. From my own savings or from my own financial incomes, I can pay for them for their pension products or their pension services. And again, there's a product where I can buy medical products for my siblings or my parents. We call it parents and siblings medical cover. So in this perspective, I was like, the reason for doing this would be because you are trying to avoid situations like somebody is sick, and therefore WhatsApp groups have to be formed and you have to be coerced to give a particular amount as a son, as a daughter. So in relation to the black tax topic, what's your take on this?
On the product?
No. Now, the product was basing my example. But now, to avoid being called to harambees, being just randomly being added into WhatsApp groups that we're having this, somebody who is sick, somebody is going for school fee, and maybe my domestic worker who was working for me and now his age has gone back to the village is randomly calling me to give favors in terms of money and other helps. So is this in relation to the black tax? Is it something you can give your comment about, be it negative or positive, like how it relates to our topic of discussion?
Okay, mine is gonna be very succinct. First of all, Meta has added a very nice feature on WhatsApp where you cannot be randomly added to WhatsApp groups anymore unless you accept an invitation. So make use of it immediately. That's one. People who abuse their access to you because they have your phone number, block them. In the context of the questions about benevolent funds, putting aside money to give, because giving is part of the human experience, a necessary one, just work within what you have and do away with all the other pressure. It's really not that difficult. It really isn't. That's my genuine view, having gone through this myself.
Giving is not a matter of calculation. Giving is a heart issue, and we'll always mess up when you try to calculate, and it's a giving issue at the end of the day. And as Solo touched on it, giving must be backed by joy and satisfaction. You know, it's a good feeling to give, very good feeling. So all of us have that thing inside us that always tells us, this one I can give, this one I can't give. You know, it's so hard. We can't set rules here for that kind of thing. Now, where you really have to give, then you must be very careful not to create dependence. Because when you create dependence, you become their God, as he said, which is wrong. Because people will be waking up and the only thing they focus is, how can I get this guy or this lady on their phone? Because if I don't get them, I will not eat. You know? So give, but do not spoil. When you spoil, you create dependence. Then if you want to go beyond, which now touches on some of the products you mentioned, you have to think about giving more than giving monetary giving. You need to think about, how do I, if it's someone who, or some people who are very close to you, you've got to think about, how do I do this in a sustainable fashion without compromising the journey I'm on as an individual, and also without making them subject to your own risks going forward. So when like COVID happened, people lost jobs, then it means even them will be cut off from their supplies. So you can get into those kind of products where you are actually setting aside a benevolent fund, which just helps them, whether you are there or not. We spoke about that in Abo. Just when Dr. Chris Kirubi, the late Dr. Chris Kirubi, was coming back, recovering from a very intense treatment program, I happened to be the one who was interviewing him and literally bringing him back to the limelight. And there's something he said to me during that interview that was very profound. He said, don't buy your parents gifts during Christmas if you've not taken them for a medical examination. That was coming from where he was coming from. But he was basically thinking, how can you invest wisely? You can go and spend on things which they really don't need, but you can really, if you are thoughtful about it, you can do something that can help them to save from very expensive medical bills in the future. Or you can just start that fund that will supply for them even when you're not there or you're incapable of providing. So for me, that's how I would look at it. Giving is not a matter of calculation. Giving is a matter of the heart.
All right, thank you so much for tuning in. Those of you who are watching virtually, we really appreciate you taking time to listen in with the audience here. We are so grateful for the opportunity to share our experiences. Hopefully it adds value to your lives. We hope you'll continue to stay tuned. We'll have more episodes coming up. If you have any questions, please send them through. Make comments, make sure you like the videos and subscribe and share them only with people that you like, please. We'll look forward to seeing you next time. I am Solomon.
And I'm Pius Mushiri, and this is The Tea.